When goodwill turns into a nightmare. Brad Pitt and the post-Katrina class action lawsuit. Brad Pitt, the A-list star once hailed as a hero of reconstruction after Hurricane Katrina, is now facing the worst legal nightmare of his life, a $20.5 million class action lawsuit filed by the very storm victims he once set out to help. Nearly 2 decades after the superstorm devastated New Orleans, dozens of families in the lower Ninth Ward are accusing the Make It Right Foundation, founded by Pitt, of building substandard green homes that turned their dream of stability into a new nightmare. The lawsuit, which has dragged on for 7 years, suddenly reignited after Spike Lee released a documentary on the aftermath of Katrina, thrusting Brad Pitt back into the spotlight. The court has now ordered all parties, including Pitt, to complete their depositions by December of this year, which means the Hollywood actor may be forced to appear in court to face questioning by the end of the year. The question remains, will Brad Pitt confront those who once saw him as a savior to set the record straight, or will he once again find a way to walk away, leaving behind the second victims of the historic storm? From disaster to a promising project. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina submerged 80% of New Orleans, claiming more than 1,500 lives in Louisiana and forcing over 1 million residents to flee. The lower Ninth Ward, a working-class predominantly African-American community located next to the Mississippi River levee, was the hardest hit, its homes completely swallowed by floodwaters. When Brad Pitt arrived there 2 years after the storm, he was stunned by the devastation and by how painfully slow the rebuilding process had been. Moved by both compassion and the influence of his celebrity, Pitt decided to act. In 2007, he founded the Make It Right Foundation with a mission to build 150 new homes for residents of the lower Ninth Ward. To carry out this ambitious vision, Pitt enlisted 21 world-renowned architects to design houses that would be storm-resistant, environmentally sustainable, energy-efficient, and aesthetically inspiring. He pledged $5 million of his own money and called for donations at global forums, including the Clinton Global Initiative. In March 2008, Brad Pitt joined former President Bill Clinton in breaking ground on the first homes, shovel in hand, amid the joy and renewed hope of the community. The Make It Right initiative quickly drew positive attention. The media hailed it as a model for post-disaster rebuilding, blending the generosity of the arts community with the creativity of green architecture. Celebrities like Ellen DeGeneres, Snoop Dogg, and Angelina Jolie, then Pitt's wife, visited to show their support. Images of Pitt, energetically directing construction, hands dirty at the site in the lower Ninth Ward, left a deep impression. In New Orleans, he became a kind of folk hero. His popularity soared. At one point in 2006, locals even printed T-shirts urging him to run for mayor. Clearly, Brad Pitt's goodwill had ignited real hope in the community, that they had not been forgotten, and that soon they would have modern, safe homes in which to rebuild their lives after the storm. The Make It Right homes. When a dream turns into a nightmare. At first, Brad Pitt's project was hailed as a quote for the residents of the lower Ninth Ward. Strikingly, modern homes began to rise on empty lots, each featuring unique architectural designs. With a price tag of about $150,000, roughly $100,000 less than the actual construction cost thanks to subsidies from Pitt's foundation, the houses were within reach for many families. Buyers also received additional support through grants and post-hurricane recovery programs. For numerous residents, it was their very first time owning a brand new home, one that was advertised as green, energy-efficient, flood-resistant, and environmentally friendly. It seemed like the perfect beginning for the neighborhood's long journey of recovery. But the dream didn't last long. Within just a few years of moving in, many families began to uncover serious problems in their so-called dream homes. Elfrida Clybourne, one homeowner, recalled how her front porch had rotted through, the railing had come loose, the stairs had become dangerously slick with mold, and the electrical outlets sparked and failed. Her husband, who had suffered a stroke, and her young grandchild faced real danger each time they tried to climb the decaying wooden steps. The Clybourne family called the Make It Right Foundation repeatedly, pleading for help, but were met only with silence. "We poured our entire savings into the down payment for this house," she lamented. "Now where are we supposed to find the money to fix such major problems ourselves?" The Make It Right homes, from dream to disaster Clybourne, was not an isolated case. Across the lower Ninth Ward, residents began sharing stories about their homes deteriorating at an unprecedented speed. Houses that had been advertised as storm-resistant turned out to leak every time heavy rain fell. The smell of mold seeped from walls and wooden floors. Black mold spread across corners of rooms due to constant dampness. Windows and roofs buckled and cracked under the relentless southern heat and humidity. Ventilation systems, designed for milder climates, were overwhelmed in New Orleans. Sweltering summers, turning many homes into bread ovens. One by one, the once prized make-it-right houses began to fail on a large scale. Cracked and sinking foundations, rotting wood frames, gaping walls, faulty electrical and plumbing systems. With each storm season, residents feared that another part of their home might collapse. Outside one decaying house in the lower 9th Ward, a handmade sign read, "Make it right, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, fix my house." The bitterly ironic plea, aimed directly at Pitt and his foundation, captured the community's frustration and disillusionment. By 2022, an inspection report revealed the grim reality. Of the 109 homes built by Make It Right, only 6 were still in relatively good condition. Dozens had been abandoned or condemned by the city as unsafe. What remained of the once promising project were rows of houses with solar panels still gleaming on their roofs, but doors bolted shut, structures tilting, yards overgrown, interspersed with vacant lots where homes had already been torn down. Experts argue that this architectural disaster had multiple causes. The project, they said, was overly ambitious and unrealistic. Instead of relying on traditional designs adapted to local climate and durable regional materials, Make It Right experimented with bold, untested architectural concepts foreign to New Orleans. O.G. Alexander, director of a local affordable housing nonprofit, observed, "They brought in world-class architects with grand ideas, but maybe they lost touch with local reality. In New Orleans or anywhere, there's a reason people build houses a certain way, with certain materials." Indeed, the modern Make It Right homes bore little resemblance to traditional tropical designs. They featured flat roofs, smooth walls with few vents, and intricate details, features ill-suited for Louisiana's humid, storm-prone climate. The green materials chosen proved equally fragile. One so-called state-of-the-art water-resistant wood degraded so quickly that Make It Right itself sued the manufacturer in 2015 over its poor quality. Construction standards also raised serious doubts. Attorney Ron Austin, representing residents in the lawsuit, summed it up bluntly. "It comes down to this: bad design plus bad materials equals bad construction." A technical report estimated that it would take $20 million to repair the home's defects, nearly as much as their original construction cost. And contrary to popular belief, these homes were not given away for free. While many imagined Brad Pitt as a superhero handing out houses to the poor, the truth was very different. Families had to take out mortgages to buy them, and they are still paying those loans today. Everyone thinks Brad Pitt just showed up handing out free houses, and that the residents suing are just ungrateful, said Austin. That's completely false. Every one of these people is paying off a mortgage, the biggest investment of their lives, only to be left with dangerous, nearly worthless homes. For the people of the lower 9th Ward, the bitter reality feels like betrayal. They had bought into Pitt's vision of sustainable, resilient homes, a dream of security after disaster. What they received instead were houses collapsing piece by piece, turning their hope into despair. Faced with the severe deterioration of their homes and the silence from the Make It Right Foundation, residents of the lower 9th Ward decided to turn to the courts. In September 2018, 2 homeowners, Lloyd Francis and Jennifer DeCure, filed a class action lawsuit in Louisiana State Court, accusing Make It Right of building and selling defective houses that caused widespread damage. The case quickly grew to include more than 100 families as plaintiffs, represented by attorney Ron Austin. The lawsuit detailed a long list of problems with the Make It Right homes, ranging from leaks, mold, rot, and structural failures to faulty plumbing, electrical issues, and poor ventilation, issues that residents had been reporting for years. Notably, the lawsuit also alleged that the foundation had known about these defects as early as 2013 but deliberately concealed the information. Evidence cited included quiet technical inspections carried out in 2016, 2017, and 2018, whose results were never disclosed to residents, and cases where some homeowners were asked to sign non-disclosure agreements before minor repairs were attempted. According to the plaintiffs, these actions showed a lack of transparency and an intent to avoid responsibility. Although the lawsuit was aimed at the Make It Right Foundation, Brad Pitt was also named as a defendant in his capacity as founder and public face of the project. This drew significant attention, since it is rare for a Hollywood star to be sued over his charitable activities. Pitt's initial response was to attempt to distance himself from the case. His lawyers argued that he was only responsible for founding and fundraising, not for design or construction, and therefore should not be personally liable for technical failures. In November 2019, Pitt formally requested that the court remove his name from the lawsuit. However, the judge denied this request, a legal setback for the actor. The court determined there was sufficient basis to examine Pitt's responsibility, particularly since he remained on the Make It Right board of directors until at least 2018. That meant that throughout the period when the project was poorly managed, Pitt was still formally in a leadership role and could not fully disassociate himself. Trapped in the lawsuit, Brad Pitt maintained a largely silent public stance on the scandal. He avoided the press and issued statements only through his legal team, insisting that he bore no direct responsibility for the project's failures. A source close to Pitt told the media that he had originally become involved out of a genuine desire to help the residents of the lower Ninth Ward, and that he was heartbroken to see matters deteriorate after he stepped back from active management. Pitt's side emphasized that he had acted based on legal advice and believed he had no liability for decisions made by others in the project. Still, the actor pledged he would do whatever he can to support a fair resolution and wanted to see a positive outcome for the community. Yet in practice, both Pitt and the foundation took steps that left many victims feeling disappointed. Instead of proactively fixing the homes, the Make It Right Foundation chose an adversarial legal strategy. Shortly after being sued, it filed its own lawsuits against other parties in an effort to shift blame. In September 2018, the foundation sued the project's chief architect, John C. Williams, seeking compensation for repair costs on the grounds of flawed designs. Back in 2015, it had already sued the manufacturer of the supposedly water-resistant wood used in the homes, claiming the material was unsuitable for the southern climate. By 2021, the foundation also sued its former chief executive officer and former treasurer for alleged mismanagement. The strategy appeared clear: prove that the fault lay with someone else. Bad designs, bad materials, bad staff. While these moves may have been intended to lessen Pitt's liability, they fueled public perception that he was avoiding direct accountability to the residents. One telling example was the behind-the-scenes settlements with certain homeowners. In 2019, while the class action lawsuit was ongoing, Make It Right quietly approached families, offering to repair individual houses if they agreed to withdraw from the lawsuit and sign confidentiality agreements. Some, out of desperation, accepted. Yet according to residents, even in these off-the-record cases, little or nothing was actually fixed. The foundation made promises but delayed or failed to carry out meaningful repairs. Such tactics further eroded trust, as the community came to believe Pitt's team was merely buying time and reducing the number of plaintiffs, not sincerely trying to address the widespread failures. Throughout the legal proceedings, attorney Ron Austin described defendant Brad Pitt as, quote, highly uncooperative. Pitt's legal team repeatedly sought to delay the provision of documents and evidence requested by the court. They also attempted to avoid his deposition. In early 2024, Pitt's lawyers petitioned to exempt him from being deposed, arguing that his filming schedule would be severely disrupted if he had to appear in court. They claimed that any absence from set could cause major financial consequences for studios, and noted that Pitt might be in Europe for several months, making direct questioning difficult. The judge, however, did not rule in his favor, stating that evidence collection was still underway and a decision on his deposition was premature. Now, as the lawsuit heads toward its decisive phase, the court has set a December 2025 deadline for all depositions, including Pitt's, to be completed. This means the actor is unlikely to avoid questioning much longer. The plaintiff's attorneys assert that they have gathered a mountain of documents, including 70,000 records and 30,000 pages of Make It Right financial files, sufficient to expose both the foundation's construction failures and Pitt's role in the project. They have even enlisted forensic auditors, architectural experts, and engineers to analyze the evidence. The legal battle, which has dragged on for years, shows no signs of cooling down. On the contrary, it is intensifying and moving toward a decisive and dramatic conclusion. Nearly 2 decades after the disaster, the story of the crumbling houses in the lower Ninth Ward has become a permanent stain on Brad Pitt's career. Once celebrated as a benefactor who came to the aid of hurricane victims, he now faces the anger and disappointment of the very community he sought to help. They bought the dream he sold them, and now they say they are living in a nightmare, attorney Ron Austin remarked bitterly. In the press, Images of Pitt, once beaming beside brand new homes, are now revisited with harsh phrases attached: spectacular failure, botched project, betrayal of goodwill. The 2025 release of the documentary, Katrina Come Hell and High Water, co-produced by Spike Lee, has reignited the Make It Right story, underscoring how survivors felt betrayed by promises of reconstruction that never came true. The renewed attention has only intensified public pressure on Brad Pitt to take responsibility for his role.